Hello there. I am Valentine T, CEO of the CharterQuest Institute. I'm also the Executive Director of the CFO Case Study competition. Welcome to our masterclass video. We're extremely excited about the CFO Case Study competition. In fact, it's a fantastic opportunity for you to come on board and secure 6 key benefits for yourself and your career. 1. You can bring the national and global spotlight on your unique talents. What does this mean exactly? You will be competing with other students from your national area, continental, or other parts of the world, as well as entry-level professionals at this point in their career. So if you succeed and come through all the way to the global finals, you would automatically be putting yourself at the world level. 2, you have a unique opportunity to connect with top employers. Employers are always looking for graduates, top skills, business talents, nationally, continentally, and around the world to help them move their businesses forward. 3, it's too crowded down there. Employers are looking for individuals who have made their mark. They have set out to demonstrate exceptionalism, right back from their student days, right back from the entry level. This is what is commonly called track record. You have the unique opportunity to begin to build your track record and differentiate yourself from the crowd. 4, you have a unique chance to build your competitiveness and resilience. Companies are looking for individuals who can compete at the national level, at the global level. So here is your chance to demonstrate to top employers that you have those characteristics. 5, it is a networking opportunity. You have the opportunity here to network with like-minded individuals who also aspire to become top CFOs and future business leaders. 6, the ultimate prize award. There is 100,000 rand available for the eventual winners. But besides that, there are awards available for the 2nd and the 3rd place finish. The purpose of this video is to clarify our case study methodology. But above that, we also want to clarify the marking grid and the assessment criteria so that as you sit down within your teams to begin to do the work, you understand exactly how the examiners are going to think through your work and assess what you intend to present. But lastly, to clarify the structure of the report, there is a minimum standard or structure in terms of what we are looking for. So those are the things that we intend to address as part of this video. The case method is deeply rooted in the CharterQuest mission. So what is a case study all about? We put you in a position to learn how to apply the various tools and techniques and principles and rules that you have actually studied at varsity or at college as part of your curriculum. We actually go out there to research real-life African businesses where decision makers are faced with enormous challenges that set the context for significant changes. Some of these companies would typically be exposed to strategic risks, which would commonly be called threats. Some of them will be exposed to opportunities that need to be exploited to advance the strategic ends of the business. Some of them would be exposed to significant weaknesses. Now, so what we are seeking to do here is to place you at the center of what a typical chief financial officer or a business leader would be faced with in terms of helping the business advance its strategic ends. So once you receive this case study, it's a 25-page case study. You need to spend the first time to go through the case study, maybe as an individual or as part of a team. There is a first section which presents some background information about the business, and there's a second section which presents the main issues that are before you in terms of what you have to be working on. Then you would have to do a second reading, perhaps even a third reading. Now, what are you aiming to achieve during this second and/or third reading? You want to do a situational analysis of the business. What is a situational analysis? You want to get an understanding of the strategic context of the business as it is right now. That would entail you spending some time trying to identify the mission of the business, the values of the business, the vision, its strategic objectives, those long-term goals that management and the board have set in terms of what they intend to deliver to their key stakeholders. You will also need to spend some time looking at the business from from the outside point of view. You probably use tools like pastel analysis, Porter's 5 forces, Porter's diamond, product life cycle analysis. All these are analytical tools that can help you scan the external environment of the business so as to identify the opportunities, the threats, and the key stakeholders that may have a bearing in terms of what this business is trying to achieve going forward. But you also need to spend some time looking at the business from inside. You could use tools like the value chain, the resource audit, what is commonly called the 9 M's. The goal is to help you understand the strengths and weaknesses of the business. Now, keep in mind, it is important that you understand other things like what is the core competence of the business, what are its critical success factors, both for the business as well as what is taken for granted in the industry. What is the culture of the business like? What is the risk appetite, the capacity of the organization to bear risks? Any information about the structure of the company, the international position of the company, the national position of the company. Now, this is a real life, or I would call it a hypothetical real life business, which is presented with a range of issues, and that is basically what you want to go through and put together, and the end goal of your analysis is to come up with a SWOT analysis. Now, we would expect that a detailed SWOT analysis becomes an integral part of your ultimate report. A modern-day CFO and business leader's core function is to assist the CEO to drive the financial success of the business. So what we've actually done is to map out and identify the core set of skills and competencies that we are seeking to draw out through in terms of this case study competition. So in terms of the marking criteria, we have mapped out the core acumen areas to assist the business drive financial success from a strategic point of view. There will be three key areas. There is strategic analysis, strategic choice, as well as strategy implementation. So we're actually trying to judge and evaluate the extent to which you can assist a business to analyze its external and internal environment, but at the same time present a range of options that are available to management, but at the same time come up with clear-cut recommendations in terms of how to move the business forward. If you look at the marking guidelines, you will notice in terms of the problem-solving acumen areas, the very first one says strategic analysis. Now I'm reading downwards, vertically. Under strategic analysis, there are two key things that we are looking for there: prioritization and focus. There are some weightings assigned to that particular section which you can look across in terms of the role there that is presented. What do we mean by prioritization? You will be confronted, you'll be faced with a range of issues. Now, keep in mind, every board of directors, they are always pressed for time. There's always so much that needs to be attended to, but usually there won't be enough time to address all these issues. Now, so when we talk about prioritization and focus, we are looking at your ability to look at the business from outside, from inside, as we've already discussed, understand its challenges, and be able to say, out of these top 12 or top 15 or top 5 issues that have been presented to me in terms of this case study, here are the 4 that I think, or here are the 3 that I think, or here are the 6 that I think that the board should be preoccupied with in terms of the upcoming board meeting. Now, but apart from that, we would like to see how you prioritize those issues. It takes one thing to say these are the 5 issues or the 4 issues that the board should preoccupy itself with. But the next thing is, in what order should these issues be prioritized? We'll be looking to see under strategic analysis, are you able to focus the attention of the board on the range of things that you believe would make the major difference to the business and help the board stay away from side issues that would not make a significant difference in relation to the rest of the other issues, and also prioritize for the board to understand the order in which those things would need to be dealt with. That is actually what we consider to be strategic analysis and what we'll be looking for from you in terms of prioritization and focus. The next skill competency area which we'll be looking is your ability to evaluate choices. Now, evaluating choices implies you're able to come up with options that are available. Now, if you look at our marking criteria there, we've put the impact and options evaluation. So we want you, for each issue that you've analyzed and prioritized, to actually identify the range of options that are available to management. Now, to identify these options, you can look at common sense, you can look at your own creativity, you can look at actually what you've actually learned from school, from all the various rules and techniques like we spoke about. Present a range of options, obviously subject to the word limit, that you believe should be considered before coming up with a final recommendation. But apart from that, what is the impact of each option? Now, keep in mind that you have previously done a SWOT analysis of the company, so every option needs to be evaluated in terms of the extent to which it reinforces or can be supported by the strengths of the business, the extent to which it operates within the operating constraints of the business, so to speak. Maybe it corrects the weaknesses of the business, it actually assists, complement, or go after certain opportunities, or addresses certain threats which you have already identified as part of your environmental scan. So we're looking to see what is the quality of the options which are actually presented, and how will this subsequently evaluated in terms of their impact in terms of each one on the business. But the last part which we've actually identified, which is actually what we call strategic implementation. This is actually where we see how you have, through the analysis that you've done as part of the choices, presented the courses of action, or the best course of action. Now, keep in mind, we'll be expecting that a good recommendation should logically flow through from the quality of the analysis that you've done as part of your strategic choices. But we'll also like to see what exactly are you putting forward to the board. You need to justify that recommendation. Why do you think this is the best recommendation for the board? Now, we would be looking very closely at the justification. Is the justification supported by the quality of the analysis that you've undertaken? Does it operate within the operating constraint of the business? Does it move the business forward in terms of the vision and mission and the strategic ends that had been you had identified as part of your environmental analysis? But apart from that, apart from the justification, we want to see how you would go about. It is one thing to come up with a clear-cut, responsible course of action. It's something else to specify the specific action plans or timelines associated with those action plans that you believe the board needs to implement in order to take the business forward. We would also like to see, from your understanding of the business or different role parties as defined in the case study, who are the parties that you believe should be accountable for carrying out a specific recommendation or a specific set of action plans. So on the vertical side, those are the things that we're looking for. Now, let me take some time to try and clarify horizontally. If you look at the top bar of the market metrics, you'll see a range of areas that we have denoted that we will be looking to evaluate your work along each of these three areas. There's what is called finance and technical. There's what is called diversity and business. There's what we have there as ethics and people. There is presentation, in brackets, questions and answers. There is innovation and integration. There is decisiveness and leadership. If you read vertically, you will notice the weights that we've assigned to each one of those. So vertically, we're saying technical and financial constitutes 15% of the weighting. Diversity and business constitutes 20% of the weighting. Ethics and people constitutes 15% of the weighting. Presentation, 20% of the total weighting. Innovation and integration, 10%. Decisiveness and leadership is the other 20%. If you're going to read horizontally, you will notice we're actually putting forward that 15% of the total marks actually relates to strategic analysis, how you analyze the strategic context of this business. 45% actually relates to your ability to generate options and how you've evaluated those options. 40% relates to strategic implementations, how you go about implementing. So whether you read horizontal or vertical, it all sums up to 100%. Now let me take some time to try and explain or clarify what we mean by finance and technical. You've actually spent some time at school as part of your professional course. You've learned some very technical financial accounting, management accounting, cost accounting, auditing, be it internal auditing or external auditing. You've learned a range of tools and techniques. from activity-based costing to activity-based management to process costing, all the way to international financial reporting standards, international auditing standards. You've learned techniques and tools and principles in terms of taxation. You've gone all the way and learned tools and techniques from a capital structure point of view. So here's actually what we refer to. We expect you to go back and invest, dig from all the tools and techniques and accounting principles and conventions right through. Draw those various principles, identify the issues that the CFO is confronted or the board of the company is confronted. Display to us that you can actually meaningfully draw those various principles and show how you can technically bring the issues that management is faced with to light in terms of the possible solutions that could come about. Now, that could be helpful in terms of the analysis of the situation, in terms of coming up with options, or in terms of coming up actually recommendations. So, in a nutshell, technical and financial means, can you apply the technical accounting concepts, process costing, job costing, activity-based costing, international accounting rules, taxation, all the way to financial management? Can you actually bring everything you've learned from there and actually untangle and unpack this case study to throw some light in terms of how solutions are potentially going to be brought to bear? The next area of assessment, which is what we call diversity and business, like we pointed out, it actually constitutes 20% of the marks. Here's what we're trying to identify your capacity to not only apply technical accounting and finance jargon, but whether you really understand how a business executive, an entrepreneur, so a business leader would need to bring this together in order to make things work. So in essence, here's what we're referring to. By business acumen, we're saying, are you able, in the context of the opportunities and threats that you have identified that the business needs to deal with, in the context of your internal analysis of the business, are you able to identify the right fit between the external environment and the internal environment of the business? Are you able to identify opportunities to enhance the earnings of the business? Are you able to identify ways of dealing with the strategic threats? Can you identify or evaluate what type of organizational structure should be put in place in order to enable this business to go after its opportunities and deal with its threats? Now, by displaying not only how the technical accounting skills actually work in business, but how it can add value to a business, save costs, enhance efficiencies, get the business to be leaner, you are actually displaying your business acumen. But keep in mind, we've also labeled that particular column business and diversity. By diversity, here's what we're looking for. As a CFO aspirant, you should be fairly conversant with business language. You should be fairly conversant with what is reported in the business press, from Financial Mail to Economist to all these magazines or journals that come out and reporting about issues on share price, on risks that affect different companies. We constantly hear about news from Bloomberg channels. We hear about Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. All these we're flooded every day with a range of information about what goes on in business. Here's what we're looking for. Diversity actually means, can you, in the context of the issues that you're faced with, can you read from modern day business journals and identify areas that we could learn from and that could meaningfully add value in terms of how to solve the actual problems that are presented to you? Now, keep in mind, we expect you to quote credible sources, and we expect you to actually point out how it can meaningfully assist to solve the problems that the company is faced with. That's from a diversity point of view. All right, the next category in terms of what we intend to use in terms of how to evaluate is what is called ethics and people. Like we mentioned before, the range of issues that management or the board is faced with, some of them are actually interwoven, or they are actually embedded by some very serious ethical dilemmas that management is actually exposed to, and for which the board actually needs concrete answers or concrete solutions with respect to. Now, by ethics, we're referring to, for instance, what we typically call professional behavior, integrity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, objectivity. These are all ethical principles that would be embedded in most of the professional codes of ethics, especially for the various professional accountancy bodies. And obviously universally applied. But apart from that, ethics goes beyond just professional ethics. There's also what is called business ethics, issues of human rights, issues of dignity, issues of justice. We are living in a world where more and more a lot is expected of businesses, what is commonly typically has been classified as corporate social responsibility. So we are actually trying to find out, a modern day CFO understands that driving the financial success of business does not begin and end with the accounting and the finance side of things. At the center of that all is people. Now, in a typical business, people, broadly speaking, would include suppliers are people, customers are people, shareholders are people, employees, which is the largest chunk of it under this particular area, would be people. But keep in mind, government is represented by people. Now, so what we actually refer to here is, are you able to look at the strategic context of the business, to look at the issues that the business is faced with, and try to put the people dimension? We understand that the overarching goal of business is to drive the financial success. In many ways, you consider that to mean to create shareholder value. That's taken for granted. We understand that. But are you able to put the people dimension to things? Can you allow the business to undertake courses of actions that would create value for shareholders, but damage its relationship with its society, with its customers, with its employees, and all the rest? So can you identify all the ethical principles that would typically confront a strategist, so to speak, or a business leader, and show us how those behavioral issues actually need to have some form of role or bearing with respect to actually what you're analyzing from a commercial point of view? So we would expect that you identify the ethical issues. You have to tell us why you believe those are ethical issues, and then display the extent to which they are linked to all these ethical principles and standards, and come up with clear-cut recommendations. That is actually what we'll be looking to see in terms of this particular section. But apart from that, the next criteria talks to presentation. It's one thing to come up with all these very report which technically is sound, from a business acumen point of view is sound, but the order of your presentation, the quality of your presentations. If we ask you to present certain information in the form of graphs and pie charts or briefing notes, we actually expect you to follow those guidelines. Present your work in a manner. Keep in mind, you're reporting to a board of directors. They need to be able to receive the report and within a short space of time understand, logically speaking, what is it you're presenting to them. So the overall quality of your presentation is going to be a significant part of how you're going to be assessed. But apart from that, we've also summarized that the questions and answers is also going to be part. Obviously, during the stage one of the competition, we would not be in a position to ask you questions and get your answers to those questions. But we would continue to use this assessment criteria as part of round 2 and round 3 and well round 4. So we will continue to judge how you present yourself on stage and how you take questions, how you deal with impromptu questions that are going to come from the judges and the rest. But at this stage, in terms of your stage 1, you're looking to present a report that is free from say grammatical errors, free from calculation errors, so to speak. If you have used appendices, we expect that the appendices should be tied back into the report. The quality of the analysis should be such that it's easy for a reader to navigate your report and actually assign you marks, and which is something which is also going to be pleasant to the board of directors to read. That's actually what we are looking for under presentation. Now, the next category in terms of the area, in terms of what you're going to be assessed, what is called innovation integration. We are looking for creativity. We expect you to work within teams. We expect you to have some serious debates within your teams in terms of the range of options that are available. But at the end of the day, very, very good reports or good answers are answers that bring to bear some degree of creativity. You know, we're living in a world where it takes your ability to discern patterns in data. For instance, we could give you information where a particular issue needs to be analyzed, and if you're going to look at that issue in isolation, you'll find that there are a range of issues, narrative as well as data, that is embedded in that issue that has some underpinnings or connections to another issue. So when we talk about innovation, were you able to creatively look at the issues before you, see where they interlink, identify recommendations which, if implemented, implemented in one situation, whilst it addresses a particular situation, may open the business to risk in terms of other situations that are yet to be analyzed? Are you able to come up with ideas that have not even been considered within the framework of the technical skills, the business acumen, which you have already been assessed? Things that like cut through, breaking in terms of what things that an examiner or the board of directors listening to this will be able to say, oh wow, this is a perspective that's why typically we would argue that it doesn't work that well if your full team is made up of all individuals who all come from a particular discipline. Creativity comes from a situation where you have a range of perspectives from your team, maybe a public relations expert within the team, somebody who is studying engineering, somebody who is studying accounting and finance. You have the opportunity to consult with your mentor, the opportunity to consult with other individuals, as long as they do not fall within the areas of exclusions that have been defined in the case study, to hear different ideas in terms of how you could bring your creativity on the board. So those are the things that we look. Can you integrate the various parts of the case study? See where the issues link. Can you come up with new ideas which have not even been considered by the examining team or by the board of directors, and meaningfully justify those elements in a way that fits in with what the board is actually faced with? The very last area in terms of how you're going to be assessed is what we have on the, which is what is called decisiveness and leadership. Now this is what we mean. If you notice, most of the marks, they sit under recommendations. We understand that you've evaluated a range of courses of actions that are available to management. We do not want candidates that sit on the fence. Decision making is inherently difficult. You're faced with uncertainties. We get that. We understand that the options that you've evaluated, each one has its pros and cons. We get that. But the beauty of this is, in a modern day environment, decisions don't come as linear where you say A plus B is equal to C. Decisions in the corporate world, they typically are multidimensional. Any particular decision taken would open the business to certain challenges. So we are actually looking, are you able to take the right balance and say, despite all these challenges, this is the best course of action available to management? Can you justify that? Can you, as part of your action plans, cater for the weaknesses in the recommendations that you've actually put forward and put it in a way that leaves no doubt to the board of directors or to management of the business as to what is it you are prescribing in terms of the solution to that particular issue? So that is the quality of what we are looking at from a decisiveness point of view. All right, the last tip I would want to share with you as CFO aspirants is basically the structure of the report. Again, it is just a suggestion. We felt we needed to give you some support as well as support to your mentors in terms of what we regard as best practice. But again, it's up to you to find any format that is adopted by a university or best practice in terms of your own research. But here are our recommendations. I'll use our table of content of what a good report will look like to give you an idea what we are looking at. We have already spelled out the number of word count, in the number of pages, and the minimum criteria for the report. But let me just talk to what we would like to see in a good report. I would say would have three key sections. There would be an executive summary. The executive summary sets out in one page, perhaps maximum 2 pages, what a busy executive picking this report and going through would have a very good high-level understanding of the strategic challenges that the business is faced with, as well as the recommendations, the things that you are putting forward in a very, very high-level format. So a good executive summary, if I was going to itemize, would say, please have something like an introduction. Maybe one paragraph can be devoted to an introduction. An introduction should have some form of a background and what the report is going to be addressing. Have something like a terms of reference. It is for you to look at the document we provided and craft a terms of reference that works for in terms of how you're trying to gravitate that within the presentation of your report. The last section, which I would like to see, we would like to see in your executive summary, is what is called prioritization and key recommendations. We would like a section, maybe you can devote 1 page or half a page or 3/4 of a page that summarizes these key issues. Like we presented, there are almost 15 pages we've devoted to giving you the details of these issues. We want to see, can you take those 15 pages and distill that in some form of summarized manner that shows us the order in which you believe management should go about trying to address these issues. Now, it is for you to research and find out, if you were going to prioritize issues before the board, what sort of criteria would you use to prioritize those issues? Some would look at the impact of the issue. Some will look at the urgency of the issue. Some will look at where the issue sits on the SWOT analysis. If you recall from the beginning, we say you have to do a situational analysis in which you identify the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the business. So some would say, take these issues, distill them into your SWOT analysis, and depending on the positioning of these issues in your SWOT analysis, then you can prioritize them in accordance. Some would argue that issues that come from outside, they tend to take more priority compared to issues that come from within the business. But at the same time, issues that come from outside could be opportunities and threats. You still have to make the judgment whether threats should be prioritized over opportunities or opportunities should be prioritized over threats. What about a situation where an internal issue is actually a weakness, but the weakness presents a major challenge compared to a threat from outside? We would leave it up to you to make that judgment, but it is important as part of your prioritization that you justify the basis on which you've used to prioritize. If you've used SWOT analysis, please clarify that. If you've used impact analysis, please clarify it. If you use urgency, please clarify that. We would like to see each issue itemized with a very brief justification why the issue is priority number 1, why the next issue is priority number 2, why the next issue is priority number 3. Like I pointed out, the order in which we gave you the issues has no resemblance to their prioritization. So it is for you to do that justification in a manner that the board can look at and be convinced that there's an appropriate basis or some order in which things can be responded to. So that's some sort of, I would say, high level analysis of what we would expect to see in the executive summary. As I've just pointed out, it should not go past 2 pages. Now, the second section of your report is actually what we call the detailed report. In the detailed report section, we actually expect you to pick the various issues that you've prioritized in the very first section. Now, we gave you 5 issues. You have to decide whether you want to focus on 2 or 3 or 4 or all 5. But remember, we did say that as part of strategy analysis in your marking criteria, we would evaluate you on prioritization and focus. Now, let me recap on that. If there are 6 issues and you tell the board to focus on all 6 issues, and it turns out that some of the issues require more focus than the other, it may mean that in terms of how to help your board of directors to focus on the main issues, your team has some weaknesses. So it is important that you clarify at this point what you are focusing on and what you are not focusing on. But now, in this detailed section of the report, for each issue you've decided to focus on, which you have prioritized, this is where we expect you to actually go into the strategic choices. You actually have to pick up the issue, analyze it, look at the impact, financial impact, non-financial impact, short-term impact, long-term impact. Explain to us the impact of the business in terms of how you see it. Table your options in terms of how you believe these issues can be resolved. Evaluate those options. This is basically what we'll be looking to see as part of the as part of your detailed section of the report. And obviously, depending on your evaluations, we now expect you to present in this same section of the detailed report what you consider to be your actual recommendations. Now, some teams would prefer to analyze all the issues and then have a separate section for recommendations. Some would prefer to recommend as you go along. In other words, you analyze an issue, you evaluate the options, you present the recommendations, you move on to the next issue. We're going to leave that entirely up to you as a team to decide how best to go about it. But now, keep in mind, there is a section on the marking guideline that we explained, which is called people and ethics. Well, we pointed out, if you recall, all the criteria that we outlined to you in terms of each of the issues, we kept raising issues of ethics and corporate social responsibility. Now, it is for you, we would expect to see a section of the report which focuses on ethics. We will not want to see the ethical issues, be that as much as they are complex by their nature, some of them have commercial implications, but we would like to see your ability to untangle the ethical issues from the commercial issues and present a separate section on ethics where you justify the ethical implications, why you consider it to constitute an ethical dilemma, bringing all the ethical principles at stake, and also then formulate your recommendations. That would what I would call to be the second section, which is the detail section. The very last section of your report is what I would call appendices. Now, it only makes sense that you're going to have to do, if you're going to do value at risk analysis, or you're going to do decision trees, or you're going to do net present value analysis, it only makes sense that you formulate your calculations in a separate section of the report, which we would call appendices. Some would choose to call it annexures. We would like to see a number of appendices. Now, you might run, you can do it the way you might choose. Every particular issue might have its own appendix. But like we pointed out from the beginning of this video, you will need to do a SWOT analysis. So it is important that the SWOT analysis you did forms part of the appendices that you've actually performed. But now, appendices by themselves don't carry any marks. Obviously, you need to do the appendices, do the calculations, do the analysis to keep the clutter away from your report. But we'll be looking to see how you've integrated these appendices into your report. So as we evaluate the detailed section of the report, we want to see how you have made references so as to have appendices that you have not explicitly and formally utilized and applied within the report would not take you very far. So this last section is basically your appendices. It's up to you to decide how many appendices you want to. You structure appendices based on the structure of your report, your overall presentation, and how you intend to integrate that within the body of your findings. So on that note, I think we think that that is a good summary in terms of helping teams that are passionate about case study, may not have mentors who can support them, but as well mentors who have their own experiences and background in terms of how to work on case studies. One needs to point out that different schools and different professors would have different ways of looking at it. Perhaps you're a mentor out there, you look at, but how do I best prepare my team to submit a very good report? We've been trying to share this with, so you can take that and get a perspective from which you can support and guide your teams. For teams that don't have mentors, it's up to you to use this as a video, some form of an outline. Now, we have done everything to stay away from actually going to the details of the issue, because anything that goes to that extent would actually mean that we are assisting you to analyze the case study. So we want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to what we have to share with you. Good luck, and see you at the Global Finals in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you. Let me unveil to you the CFO Case Study 2016, which is the case study pack itself from which you will be working through as part of a team. The document itself has three key parts. There is the first part, which runs from the very beginning all the way to page 4. That seeks to clarify to you the rules of the competition, why the competition, submission formats, and specific disclaimers that you need to be conversant with and ensure that you abide by those rules. That first part, which is page 4, ends with page 4, which is basically the task. The task is what is actually being expected from you. Now, it seeks to clarify exactly how the subsequent two parts of the pack itself are going to be addressed. Now, the second part of the pack actually runs from page 5 to page 14. That's actually the case study itself, the beginning. But now, the beginning in terms of the background information, it identifies the company, it identifies the global business environment within which this company is operating. It goes all the way to situate the company itself, its challenges, its opportunities, some background information up to 2014, as well as its financial performance, ratios, and other statistics, its share price, and all the rest. Now, you're not asked to solve anything with respect to this first section, specifically referring to page 4 to page 14. It is just background information to help you do your industry scan, your environmental scan, your situational analysis, to understand the background from which the company is coming. Now, the second part of this document, which actually runs from page 15 all the way to page 25, is actually the scenarios that you're being asked to address yourself to. There are actually 5 scenarios which have been documented here. These scenarios are not necessarily in any order of importance. They've just been presented there by way of helping you understand the issues that need to be addressed. So your duty is to analyze these various scenarios, identify the technical skill areas, the people elements, and all those things, and begin to unpack and come up with possible solutions. Now, it is important at this point that we try and assist you, especially for those who may not have mentors and therefore would struggle to understand exactly what is required of them. It's important that one seeks to clarify some of the pervasive skills or the important skill areas associated with each of these tasks. The issues have not been presented in any order of priority. They've just been outlined on your case study from the beginning all the way to the end. The very first issue is called Security Crisis and Legal Wrangling in Nakolia. This presents a major challenge for the business. We have not clarified as to whether this is an opportunity, whether it's a threat, whether it's a weakness, or whether it's an ethical issue. But we have presented this issue to yourself. Your duty is to analyze this issue and determine what exactly is the problem with respect to this particular issue. We have tabled there what we will call the oversight responsibility area. In a typical business, a matter like this is probably going to be handled by corporate affairs. So a modern day CFO needs to be familiar with the role of corporate affairs. Corporate affairs is within that role where things like investor relations, legal issues are actually dealt with, and the rest. So we've tried to identify for you the specific knowledge areas that you would need to go and draw principles from to be able to resolve or apply it to whatever you have to be attending to with respect to this particular issue. Those knowledge areas include ethics and corporate social responsibility. So you need to be conversant with the principles that actually regulate and guide this particular area. How a company goes about crafting and executing a legal defense strategy. You need to understand that because it will be vital in terms of how to respond to the issues that are actually with respect to this first one. There's also issues of how to manage your reputation, the stakeholders of a business. You will need to draw some understanding from that area to address this particular issue. The very next issue, again, the second but not necessarily in order of importance, is a mobile operator license opportunity in Chinese. Chinese is a country somewhere in South Asia, South Pacific. MCOM is eyeing the chance or the expectation that it might want to go into this particular market as part of the process of continuing to expand and develop its business. So this is typically what we will call oversight role of a CEO from a strategic management point of view. Now, the specific knowledge areas that you would need to grasp in order to untangle or analyze this particular opportunity and come up with clear recommendation would include, once again, you have to understand your ethics and corporate social responsibility, how companies go about plotting a global expansion strategy. Some knowledge from there would be helpful. International investment strategy, how risk and return dynamics and currency issues or currency risks are actually taken into account when you plot an international growth strategy, how to assess an international market. You might at some point, MCOM might want to enter into one particular foreign market, maybe out of the continent where it operates. What types of tools would you really put together to be able to assess an international market? Market growth strategies, entry strategy, how to enter a country and actually implant yourself and and continue to sustain and renew yourself in that particular country. And one key element that will be vital to unpack in this particular is what's called strategic performance management. From a corporate governance point of view, from an integrated reporting point of view, this company, MCOM, has a range of metrics that it has put in place in terms of its reported commitments to its stakeholders. It needs to look at how those strategic performance measures could add value in terms of their ability to win licenses in those foreign markets they are actually trying to go to. The very third issue, again, in the order in which we have presented, is what is called Shared Services Center in Sadimba. MCOM is faced with very serious cost control challenges. They have been looking at ways how to reform their operating models and save cost and become very much more streamlined as a business. And they've responded by creating a shared services center in their headquarters in a country called Sadimba. And MCOM is faced with backlashes across all its markets. There are concerns as to whether that is not cutting jobs from other markets and actually creating jobs in the markets where it is deemed to be MCOM's specific area of preference. Now, this presents a huge challenge. Shareholders are wanting to know how much savings have been achieved thus far. Shareholders want to know whether there is need to review the strategic decision that has led to the creation of this shared services center. The specific discipline, or in terms of pervasive skill that you're going to need to be able to unpack this issue, actually stems from the area which is called cost accounting, cost and management accounting. Now, I'm going to point out some of the knowledge areas that will specifically support this area. Again, ethics and corporate social responsibility would be helpful in terms of you understanding how a company can respond to stakeholder backlashes in some of his markets, how to deal with cost and cost recovery, overhead apportionments and recovery from business units is also a knowledge area. So things like overhead absorption rates and all the rest would be vital for you to deal with that. There's also issue of currency risk. MCOM is based in Sadimba. It's got markets in Middle East, in other countries like Nakolia and the rest. It trades in multiple different currencies. As part of the decision to create this shared service center in Sadimba, there will be issues of currency risk and how the treasury, group treasury function will respond to be able to support the business with this specific element of its strategy. But embedded within that is also issues of supply chain. Now, a shared service is probably going to assist with supply chain issues. Do you understand supply chain, models of procurement management, and how those would impact on the information systems of a company? And lastly, on that particular element is what is called technology and big data. So these are the knowledge areas or areas from which you can draw your understanding from your background studies to be able to help respond to the challenge in terms of cost control for the business. The other issue, the very next issue that is in the order in which we present is what we term political risk and strategic uncertainty in a key market called Elanya. Elanya is one of the markets where MCOM actively operates in the Middle East. Now, Elanya is caught up in some serious political and strategic uncertainties that set the scene for major shareholder value challenges that the company will need to try and grapple with. The specific discipline areas or oversight responsibilities that you will need to draw from would actually include risk management as well as financial management. Now, let me point out some of the types of tools and knowledge that could be helpful. In fact, these are just some. You could raise some of them by yourself. We allow you the scope to go beyond what we have actually presented to help you untangle the issue from the multiple different perspectives. Now, again, ethics and corporate social responsibility understanding will be key to understanding the strategic context and the challenge that this business faces in this particular market. But apart from that, the issue has to do fundamentally with risk and risk management. So tools of risk and value analysis that are going to be vital would include things like ranking, risk mapping, sensitivity analysis, how to use decision trees to quantify and evaluate complex options that are before the board. Sensitivity analysis, these are some of the tools that could be helpful to help you understand exactly how to quantify the options and actually present a way forward for management. But it doesn't add the concepts like value of perfect information is going to be critical. Expected values will be critical. Standard deviations will be critical in terms of how to unpack this particular issue. And I'll take it all the way to Black-Scholes. Black-Scholes model, you may find that vital in terms of quantifying the uncertainty uncertainty or the value embedded in whatever options are actually provided for here. But apart from that, also dividend valuation techniques, how to value dividends and bring that in terms of understanding how it impacts on the range of on the options of the business going forward. Those are the knowledge areas. Now, last but not the least is what I would call Nakolia fine and MCOM capital structure. A huge fine has been imposed on MCOM. In fact, the fine is so massive. I'll leave it up to you to evaluate what is that fine, the value of that fine in relation to the total balance sheet and or statement of financial position of the business. But here's the challenge. A massive fine has been imposed on MCOM. MCOM has to respond in terms of whether or not to pay the fine, and if it has to pay the fine, what is the impact on its capital structure, what is the impact on its gearing, what are the other challenges that it has to deal with in terms of how to respond to this fine. The specific knowledge areas that a top modern day CFO business leader would need to grapple or grasp, or from where concepts and tools and techniques would actually derive from to respond to this issue, would actually involve auditing, which will be split between internal auditing as well as external auditing. This would test your knowledge and understanding of corporate governance. It would also test your knowledge and understanding of financial reporting. It will go all the way and test your knowledge and understanding of financial management in terms of how a CFO can put all this together to drive the financial success of a business. Now, the specific knowledge areas associated with each of these oversight disciplines is what I will call, once again, ethics and corporate social responsibility. You need to have a good understanding of international financial reporting standards, what is commonly called IFRS, because the issues that you'll be dealing with, they will require you to apply IFRS. You also need to have a good understanding of international auditing standards, the role of external auditors, what are the limitations in terms of how they do their work, and apart from that, issues of corporate finance, how to raise money. This business needs to look at how to raise capital to finance this fine, this huge fine that is being imposed on them. Should they raise it from debt? Should they raise it from equity? If they're going to raise it from debt or equity, what are the implications on their share price? What are the implications on their long-term capital structure from a taxation point of view? Even if they chose to raise it from debt, for instance, they still have to make choices. Must they raise that debt from their home country in Sadimba or in the key foreign markets or in Europe? These are major issues that you are being called upon to look at and try and come up with recommendations. Now, that would be some form of rundown of the issues that you need to deal with on the case study, the knowledge areas and the specific skills and techniques that you need to draw from to be able to respond to that. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to what we have to share with you. Good luck, and see you at the Global Finals in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you.